For the moles and chemical formula lab for chemistry 1106, what we're going to do is first, we got our crucible and cover, we got the triangle, the setup with the Bunsen burner. We're going to heat up for approximately 1 minute so that we can kind of disregard anything that's inside that crucible. There we go. So we're going to heat up for about a minute, and then we'll let it cool, and then we'll get the mass of the crucible. So we'll go ahead and wait that minute, and then we'll transfer. Our minute is up, and so now, as you can see, my timer is up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn off the heat, and then we're going to transfer our crucible with our cover. Go ahead and close it. Don't want to have something entertaining happening. We're going to place it on a wire gauze just so that it doesn't get some air underneath, so it'll cool a little faster. So then we're going to go ahead and wait for a couple till it cools down, and then we'll go ahead and take the mass of this. So sometimes we run into the problem when we get magnesium, it gets a little bit oxidized. So it gets a little tarnished. So then with a piece of a steel wool, what we can do is we can kind of take off that tarnishing, and as you can see, kind of just scraping it off, and we end up from what was dark and almost mixed in and camouflaged with the table. Let me try to shake it out. There you go. And as you can see, so this is our end product of our magnesium strip being used with the steel wool. So I left the other side on purpose oxidized and tarnished so that you can see the difference between the two. On the right side, if you can see, I scrubbed it off with some steel wool, and then on the left side it looks a little black. All right, and so there you go. So that's what we're going to do with all our samples so that we can get approximately 0.15 grams of the magnesium ribbon so that we can continue with our exam. So we're going to take the mass of our crucible with the crucible cover. So we're going to place it on our scale. And so go ahead and record the mass of the crucible and the cover, and this is going to be for the one for the magnesium ribbon. Okay. And then now we're gonna get, I stripped off as much of the oxidation as possible. So now I'm gonna scale and mass our magnesium strips, and we want approximately around 0.15, in between 0.15 and 0.3. So we're gonna go ahead and add those. And it is 0.23, and this is the mass of the magnesium ribbon. So then the mass of the crucible, we got a ribbon in there. The crucible cover is gonna be, there you go. Make sure to record your reading, and then we're gonna go ahead and heat up. I've twisted the magnesium ribbon and I've placed it on inside the crucible. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and weigh the crucible, the mass, the crucible, the ribbon, and the crucible cover. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna heat the magnesium, and we got our burner going, and we got the magnesium in there. We're gonna kind of put it straight, make sure that everything is heated properly. We're inside the hood for the purpose that right now the magnesium will catch on fire, and so it'll be entertaining. And so as we heat up the magnesium, we're gonna go from inside the hood. And so as we continue heating, we're just gonna wait for the excitement to happen. And then once it's done burning, what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of cover the top and kind of slightly ajar, leave it open. All right, so we're just waiting. And as you can see, it's already gonna be burning. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna place the top of the crucible cover just slightly above it. Just kind of let it burn and continue letting it burn. And then we're gonna wait till we see no more flame. Okay, as you still see, there's still some orange in there. And then we'll come back to it. Hopefully, let me see if I can zoom you in. It's still kind of orange in there. Hopefully you can see it. Now we remove the cover and we're gonna let it sit for about 5 minutes and then let it heat up for, I guess, a good 5 minutes. We're gonna turn off the burner and then we're gonna just allow the crucible to reach room temperature so that we can take our next measurement. After the 5 minutes, we're just gonna go ahead and turn off the gas. And then once we turn off the gas, we're gonna allow it to cool to room temperature, and then we're gonna go ahead and add 15 to 20 drops of water. And here we have our water. And so once we add our 15 to 20 drops of water, then we're going ahead and add the cover again. And once we add the cover, we're gonna heat up for about 5 minutes gently, and then we're gonna allow it to cool, and then we're gonna get our measurement of our mass. So during the heating process, something that we're worried about is the reaction of magnesium with nitrogen. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some DI water. We're going to add about 10 to 15 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19 and 20. And so once we added the water, our substance looks kind of like the following. Now what we're going to do is we're going to remove those nitrogen compounds, and so we're going to heat it up now. So we're going to close the crucible again, and we're going to heat gently for about 5 minutes to drive off that excess water. And then we're going to heat 5 minutes strongly, and then we're going to allow it to cool, and then we're going to measure our crucible again. All right, so let the heating begin. So we're going to start our heating process. Initial heating here is going to be 5 minutes. We're going to drive off the water, and it's going to be approximately around 5 minutes. We're going to lower the heat a little bit, and then we're going to drive up the heat. So we're gonna slowly burn for about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna drive up the heat, and we're gonna heat for 10 minutes, and then we're gonna cool down and take our measurement. The 10 minutes are up. Our 10 minutes are up, and so hopefully we have driven off those droplets of water that we added, so that we can get rid of the nitrogen compound that we were hopefully wanting to get rid of, because the only thing that we want inside that crucible and crucible cover is going to be just the magnesium oxide compound as pure as possible. And so after we've done our heating, all we're going to do is allow it to cool and get our measurement. All right. Okay, so now we're going to mass our crucible with our magnesium oxide compound. And so after we let it cool down to room temperature, we're going to go ahead and take the mass, and that'll be the mass of the crucible cover, and the magnesium oxide, hopefully. Remember, we already drove off the nitrogen compound, and so this will be your last measurement. Okay, so now we're going to heat the crucible. This is for our magnesium sulfate entity. So we're going to get the gas out. We're going to go ahead and light it. We're going to go ahead and heat this up for about a minute. Once that minute is up, we'll remove it and we'll cool it. We'll get the mass of it. So all we're doing is just waiting for the minute to be up, and then we'll go ahead and transfer. Got about 20 seconds. We'll turn off the heat, close the crucible, and then transfer onto our wire gauze. We got about 10 seconds. All right, our minute's up. We're gonna go ahead and turn off the heat. We'll transfer. We're gonna close, and we'll go ahead and transfer onto our wire gauze and let it cool down. And then we'll go ahead and take the mass of that. So now we're gonna take the mass of our crucible and cover for our magnesium sulfate. We're gonna take off the water of magnesium sulfate. It's a hydrated substance, so that means it has water molecules embedded into the crystalline structure. And so what we're going to do is we're going to remove that water so that we can determine the hydrate of that magnesium sulfate compound. So we're going to go ahead and take the mass of our crucible and cover. So it is 27.89, 27.9. And so then what we're going to do now is we're going to add about 1/3 of the magnesium sulfate complex in there, and then we're going to take the mass again. Okay, so then here we have our magnesium sulfate substance, but I won't tell you the hydration part of it. Hopefully you can see what it looks like. It's a white crystalline. And so we're going to add about 1/3 of the crucible. And then we're going to take the mass again. And that'll be our last addition. It's about 1/3, give or take. And so we're going to go ahead and close our magnesium sulfate. And then we're going to take the mass again of this all together. And so go ahead and make your measurement again. And that is the mass of the crucible cover, and the magnesium sulfate hydrate. Okay, so now we're gonna heat our crucible with the magnesium sulfate in this. So we're gonna go ahead and turn on our gas. And we're gonna heat gently for about 5 minutes. And then we're gonna increase the heat to about, yeah, that should be good. Gonna increase, so we're at 5 minutes, and then we're gonna go ahead and increase the heat for about 10 minutes. So 5 minutes, we're gonna heat this fashion. And let me show you. Oops, turned on me. Let's go ahead and turn it around this way. Hopefully it gets it. And so we're just heating gently for about 5 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and increase the heat to 10 minutes. Our 5 minutes are up, so we're going to increase the heat a little bit. And we're going to now heat for 10 minutes. And so let those 10 minutes begin, and after those 10 minutes, we're going to allow it to cool and make sure that the bottom is at least somewhat of a dull orange to a reddish. So we're going to go ahead and heat it. And then we'll revisit. We'll let it cool down to, what do you call it, room temperature. And then we'll go ahead and take the mass. And then we'll heat again and take a mass. What we're looking for is right there. And so as we've done heating our 10 minutes, we see the glow. And so we're good to go. All we're gonna do is just turn it off and let it cool down. Once it cools down to room temperature, we're gonna take our secondary measurement of mass and see if we're good. And after we're massing it, we're gonna put it back on the flame for another 5 minutes, and then let it cool down, heat, and take the mass again. If the mass changes, we're gonna take the mass of the secondary mass into our calculation. So we're gonna go ahead and turn it off and allow it to cool down, and we'll take our mass. So we're gonna add heat again, like I said, a secondary time for the same approximate time. We want about 5 minutes kind of indirect heat, slow heat, and then we're gonna go ahead and heat it up. Make sure that the bottom is a glowing red. So first 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes, and then cool down, and then we'll go ahead and take our secondary measurement. After the 5 minutes, we're gonna increase the heat a little bit. And then we're gonna wait for about 10 minutes, and then after the 10 minutes, we're gonna let it cool down and then remeasure. After the 10 minutes of the second time we've heated, now we're just gonna turn off the flame, and then when we look down at the bottom, we get that nice little glow that we were looking for. We're gonna go ahead and close the crucible cover, and make sure that there's no condensation on the cooling down. And then what we're gonna do is just let it cool down, and then we're gonna go ahead and take the mass of it, and that'll be it. The mass is lower than our first initial mass, then that means for our calculations, we're gonna go ahead and use the secondary mass. So then the last thing that we're gonna measure is after our secondary heating, we allowed it to cool down, and then we're gonna now turn on the scale. And in here, we should have our magnesium sulfate and hydrate compound, which means that there is no more water in there. And so as we put it on our scale, and our mass is a little bit lower than our initial one. I think so, I can't remember, I gotta check back. But if the mass is lower in this case, we're gonna take this mass as the one that we will use to calculate our anhydrate, okay? Or to calculate the hydrated. So to determine the number of water molecules from the initial compound of magnesium sulfate.